The Center for Human Systems presents the Leadership and Self-Mastery program. This is the third module of the Conscious Use of Self course. We're calling it the 3 Keys to Conscious Use of Self.
Welcome back to the Leadership and Self-Mastery program. This is the third module in the course Conscious Use of Self, and it's focused on the 3 keys to self-mastery. My name is Ronnie Gill, and I'm here with Michael Broom, who's the organizational development guru and the founder of the Center for Human Systems, whose deep expertise in organizational development is at the core of this program. Hello, Michael.
Hello, Ronnie, and thanks for such a great introduction.
You're very welcome. Let's start with a really simple question. What are the 3 keys to self-mastery? Can you define them for us?
Absolutely. Number 1, intention. We all have intentions to create some impact. The question is, will our behavior result in that impact? If not, we need to recalibrate our intention, recalibrate our behavior until our desired impact is achieved. Number 2 is connection. Do we have the quality of connection that we need with the people we need to support us in accomplishing our goals? This one is particularly important for leaders because the essence of being a leader is leaders have some place to go, that's intention, and they have people following them, and they must have connections with them. The third key is ego management. We all have egos, but yet more often than we would like to admit, our egos are managing us rather than we managing our egos. Our egos always have the desire to protect, enhance, or maintain our sense of identity and self-esteem, and sometimes it can get in the way of us accomplishing our goals. Is that helpful?
Yes. So let me just recap that really quickly. So the 3 keys, as you stated them, were as leaders, in order to sort of work on our self-mastery, we need to be aware of our intention versus our impact. We need to be aware of the quality of connections that we have with our followers, our team members, plus our colleagues and other people in the organization. And we need to be able to manage our egos. So you're saying if I think about all this and I practice these 3 things in every interaction with every person, that I will become a more effective leader?
Thank God we don't have to practice it in every interaction with every person, but you've got the basic idea down. You will be a more effective leader as you decide to be more conscious and deliberate in these 3 areas in the situations that are important to you. It need not be with every person.
Okay. So I know that we're probably going to get to some examples in a minute, but I first wanted to ask you how you become more conscious and deliberate. It seems like that's a lot of work to interrupt yourself and make sure that you do these things. How do you become more conscious of like intention, impact, connection, ego management? It's a lot to think about.
You know, it's like anything. If you're really going to do it well, it takes work and conscious attention to it. You might be a great athlete. They don't become Olympic athletes without a lot of intentional, fully focused practice. Same thing here. The more you practice, the better off you'll be. I have never met a great leader who doesn't have lots of stories about all the times that they screwed up and how they learned from those times and how they practiced and practiced and practiced and had a lot of support in doing so. It's the same thing as in sports. It's the same thing in terms of being a good husband or being a good wife. You interrupt yourself whenever you notice that what you're doing is not getting the response that you want. When you're not getting the impact that you want, or you notice that what is happening isn't what you want to be happening. That's when it's time to shift gears and refocus and think, now what is the impact that I intend to have here? All of our actions and inactions have an impact, whether we notice them or not, whether we intend them or not. So we might as well consciously intend whenever it's an important situation in front of us. Life works best when the impact of what we do is what we intended. And there are times when our impacts are unintended and undesirable, and that's when we need to shift back to being conscious.
You know, I really, really love that statement. Life works best when the impact of what we do is what we intended. I think that is just really important to keep close to heart. And I also really liked what you said about the practice. I mean, you have to have a deliberate practice in order to do the intention versus impact, to remind yourself of the connections. Do I have the right connections? Do I have enough connection with people? And then, do I have my ego in check?
Being a really good leader, being a great leader takes work. It's hard. And so you just have to practice these things. And after a while, it gets easier and easier and easier because it becomes part of your unconscious competence.
Yeah. So let's get to the example. Let's get to some examples. Can you give us an example of each of these 3 keys in action?
Sure. Let's start off with the case of Jason Campbell. In fact, we'll use Jason for all 3 of these keys. He was a fascinating young man. Yeah, I guess he still is.
I hope that's not his real name, Michael.
Well, it's not, but he wouldn't mind anyway. At the time I met him, he was a brand new vice president of operations of a heavy equipment manufacturer. They made these huge dredges. Jason was tasked with turning this rather staid and hidebound culture into one that was much more responsive to both customer and employee needs. Now, this is the part about impact. During a town hall meeting with his employees, he was still fairly new, Jason intended to come across as a compassionate and effective leader. During the meeting, however, he was asked several times about his lack of experience in heavy manufacturing. On automatic, he felt attacked and tried to defend himself. He cited at length his experience in Silicon Valley, which is nothing like heavy manufacturing, the books he's written, and his academic credentials. The audience was not impressed. In fact, they were less than impressed. And they expressed their concern, very much out loud, that he may not be the right person to be their leader. They were pretty upfront about it. Had he been conscious, he might have stuck to his initial, more thoughtful intention of being a leader of compassion who listened well. However, he got a bit stressed, automatic switched in, and he felt the need to defend himself, which just made things worse. So that's such a good example of intention and impact, and Jason not making the impact that he really needed to have and that he really wanted to have.
Yeah. I think we've all been in those situations where we've had to establish ourselves with a team or with a new client or whatever it may be. and they start to question our credentials or our ability to lead or why we're even there. And you get defensive. It's really hard not to go into that automatic behavior.
Now,
So,
the key there, again, it comes from experience, is to know not everybody is going to like what's going on. So to be ready for the negativity that you're likely to be confronted with in almost any new situation, because you don't know. So prepare yourself for it being positive, prepare yourself for somebody's going to go in the opposite direction. And that's what happened to Jason. He was caught by surprise. And next time he won't be as surprised.
right.
I'm sorry, I did interrupt you.
It's okay. So I think that's such an like I said, I think it's such an interesting example, because that sort of his automatic defensive reaction just kind of reinforced what they were trying to say about that he was not fit to be a leader in this organization. So let's talk about what Jason should have done differently.
Okay, so this is about connection. Jason's town hall meeting fell flat from his misdirected intention. It also shortened the honeymoon period that many folks have when you first show up. When his town hall meeting fell flat, he actually decreased his connection with his people, ended his honeymoon period pretty quickly, and things went downhill from there. Still smarting from the failed town hall meeting, his behavior with his middle managers consisted of posturing and telling stories about his past successes. So notice that he is still reactivated. He's into his energy sponge. Things got worse. Within the following month, he lost two of his most senior engineers. So you can really see how his lack of connectedness really was just causing him even bigger problems. Jason's connectedness with his people had deteriorated to the point where he could get little done. That is not a position any leader wants to find themselves in. Being connected is, if you don't have connections with your followers, then they are not likely to follow you very far.
You know, it's interesting. Jason's story actually reminds me of the time where I was a member of a team and a new leader came in. And this new leader, started doing things like asking, well, what are you working on? And I said, I'm working on such and such project. And he goes, well, that money's not coming to my team. So in my consideration, you're not working on anything. And it was just such an offense. It was so offensive to hear someone say to you that you are worthless. Yeah. And a lot of people said to me, oh, you should be more patient with him. But I was so deeply offended by his initial approach, his posturing as I'm the leader and I should be telling you what to do, that, and resistance is futile, really, that it didn't really go well. I eventually ended up leaving the organization, and that leader, a year or two later, eventually got fired. But let's not get sidetracked. Let's go back.
It is a very, very important example. You did not want to follow this guy any longer.
Right.
To the point where you actually left. Now, leaders cannot afford to lose their followers. When leaders lose their followers, their effectiveness is being dramatically decreased. He was decreasing his effectiveness as a leader when he lost his connection with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So going back to the example of Jason, what should he have done to build those connections with his team?
Sure. So we're going to go to our third key, which is ego management here. We all have egos, our sense of self-esteem and our sense of identity. A healthy ego provides us with the joys of pride and positive esteem. However, under stress, even the healthiest ego can overwhelm us with its intention to protect or enhance itself. So let's go back to Jason and his ego management. Jason actually was able to save himself. After several coaching sessions with me, he really began to understand that his ego had been guiding his intentions and hampering his ability to connect with his subordinates. We laid out a plan so that he could recoup his missteps. He took his management team away on a 2-day retreat where he owned his fumbles. This actually set the stage for a remarkably open and honest dialogue about what his direct reports would like to see in him as their leader. From there, we actually spent a whole day cleaning that up. The second day, we spent that day developing plans to reinvent the entire operations area. With his connections rebuilt, revived, the journey to rebuild trust with his other employees could get underway, and we could get back to his initial intention of really rebuilding the entire culture of this operation.
Well, I mean, that sounded like it eventually turned out well for Jason.
Took some work, but we got there.
Yeah. So if he had started by being aware of his ego, his need to prove himself first, it probably would have gone better in the long run.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Would have gone better in the long run and in the short run as well.
And in the short run, he would have wasted a lot less time and energy.
Mm-hmm.
So, he intended to be this compassionate leader, but by being defensive when he was questioned, he started listing his credentials, which backfired, and he didn't seem to be aware that he was not having the impact that he intended. So I think that, when someone questions our leadership, our ego's often threatened, and that's exactly what happened to Jason. But what he needed to do and what we need to do and think about is how we found a way to make a connection with people. And he did that with his offsite, where he was transparent, admitted his mistakes, realized his ego got in the way, and then things started to shift. So I'm just curious, how long did that journey take from that initial town hall meeting to the management of his, to that offsite management?
It probably took us about 6 weeks. Now, much of that 6 weeks was simply, that you cannot schedule a retreat and have it happen just in a couple of days. I mean, it takes planning. It takes getting people's schedules on board and all of that. I think once Jason and I began to talk about ego issues and intention and connection, he really came along pretty quickly. It's just the time it took to get the scheduling done. A point that's probably useful to make here is that, we all from time to time will take something personally. And anytime we take it personally, we can say to ourselves, oh, there's my ego. And do I want to follow my ego's path, or do I have a bigger intention here? That's what I was able to help Jason do, to really look at, okay, yes, I have this ego. This is my very first big leadership job. So I was kind of scared to start with, and I wanted to really come across well. I just did not expect the attacks I got. Now, notice it felt to him like an attack. The guys who were asking the questions wanted to know what they were getting. You know, I mean, their intention wasn't to attack him, but his ego interpreted as an attack, given the amount of stress Jason had put himself under. And notice I say Jason put himself under because stress is always something that we do to ourselves. Hence, it too is a conscious use of self issue.
You know, Michael, I'm just curious if I may follow up on that a little bit. Sometimes as leaders, we don't have time, right? We are thrown into a situation where we're being asked to lead a group of people we have never led before. I don't have time to make connection with these people. What would you say to someone in that instance? Like, I need to just tell them what to do. I don't have time to make connections.
I'd say then pretty much you're going to fail as a leader. You know, if these are people that you have not met before, you need to connect with them, unless it is truly a dire emergency where, let's say there's a fire that needs to be put out, maybe in a real fire, or there's a proposal that is due within the next 3 days. I'm just showing up, and all I can do is say, folks, I don't know you, you don't know me. Let's get this piece of work done first. Then we can get to know each other. So there certainly are times, when, you don't have time to really connect. But, even then, just my saying, hey, folks, this is an emergency. Let's get this done. Then we'll get to know each other. Even though that takes a few minutes, it does at least begin to make a connection and to acknowledge that we need to connect.
Right. Okay.
But a leader that doesn't even notice that they're doomed as a leader.
That's right. So there we go back to the conscious use of self and being aware of your automatic behaviors.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's switch gears a little bit, Michael.
Sure.